Hey, this is Ebube Olivia Akueme, and I'm coming to you live from Kent in the UK. How are you today? I hope you're well and you're good and you're having an absolutely fantastic Wednesday. I'm having a very good Wednesday. I'm recovering from a bout of cold, so I might sound, somehow. But other than that, I'm good and I'm well, and I'm grateful to be here. Tonight, I'm asking you a question, and my question is, how do you know when somebody's lying? Of course, I try to, share a tip or two when it comes to the 5 major areas of life: your health, relationships, spirituality, finances, and of course your work or your career. Today is kind of like touching on everything, because when we talk about the issue of trust, you find trust in almost everything, every human interaction. Basically, it's the foundation. So today is having that conversation as to say, how do you know when someone is lying? I think this is one of the questions that sometimes we don't even stop and ponder, but sometimes we realize that there probably might be something wrong in our relationship or our dealing with somebody, and it might be at work, it might be in our own personal relationships, outside of work, or business or things like that. But wherever you have any human interaction, the issue of trust can never be set aside, and that's why knowing when somebody's lying can help you in the long run. And this is something that maybe you've never thought about, but it's a good to know. It's a good to know because it would help you to, first of all, number one, determine who to work with, because you need trust when it comes to majorly almost every area of life. You need that level of trust. So you can't talk about having a healthy, good relationship in business, in at work, or in your own personal life without this conversation around trust. And so when you have lying in the mix, it kind of changes everything. It changes the story, it changes the dynamics, it changes just about anything you can think about relating to that human interaction. And so my question to you today is, how do you know when someone is lying? And I think that for most people, if you don't necessarily pay attention, you might not pick this up, but eventually people begin to notice that there's something about somebody or something about their relationship with somebody that causes them to doubt a thing or two about what the person says, or probably what they do and all that, and for good reason. And the reason is because lying is one of those things that you don't necessarily pick up immediately, but it takes a while. It takes a bit of doing it over again, and then people begin to pick that up, and sometimes they might not even be able to articulate exactly what it is that they're trying to express, but then they know that there's something not quite right in that particular relationship. And so for me, there are usually 3 areas that you can, right off the bat, you can, tell or know when somebody's lying. Number one, always look at people's actions. Of course, not their words. You don't look at people's words. You look at their actions, because people can say anything. Anyone can say anything. Anyone can suggest anything. Anyone can, create a kind of impression using their words. But let me tell you, the difference between people who are lying and people who are not lying would always be when it comes to their level of action, their effort. Because if somebody was lying, then obviously they're not necessarily going to put in the effort required towards what it is that they are lying. And I'm going to put this now in practical terms. The second thing, like I said, is looking out for patterns. Watch out for patterns, repetitive kind of scenarios. If you find that you're always having this situation with a particular individual, or maybe people whereby, it seems like they're constantly repeating or saying a particular, making up a particular situation, maybe making up words or lies and anything like that, check out the patterns. What have you noticed about this person over a period of time? And of course, look at people's results. What they say, does it match up to, the sort of impression with their words that they create? Does that match up to the results that they have? It is the kind of results that they've created and that they have. Does it match up to their words. And so if the actions, the patterns, and the results are not in alignment with what they are saying, we already know where this is heading to. So my conversation today really wasn't about sort of like, the actions and, the patterns and the results, because those three things don't lie. And, again, lying is a form of excuse. But my conversation today is really looking at the types of liars that you might encounter in any of your human interactions. So let's look at number one. The number one kind of liar is somebody who would normally say things, but they never do them. Now, they have an intention to do it, but they just never do it. There's a difference, and I want you to note the difference, because I'm going to mention three types. Which one have you noticed? Which one have you experienced? And which one do you think you might be? It's not impossible. So somebody who is constantly saying, let's take an example of maybe losing weight. I always like to use that example. And the person maybe is always talking about the gym. They're always talking about things to do with losing weight, but they never do it. It's most likely they have an intention, but they are dealing with fear or maybe anxiety or depression or something like that. So they're not doing it because of those strong emotions like fear and anxiety and, or whatnot that they're dealing with. And that's understandable. It's not acceptable, but it's understandable. Okay. And then we have this other category of people that they do a little. So you would find that, again, when we use the example of, let's say, going to the gym and, losing weight and all of that, they might go every now and again. But then when you gather and you're talking, they might be the ones that will make the loudest noise, say they've done the most, activities or whatever you want to call it in the gym. Usually, it comes from a place of pride or laziness or envy. So it's coming from that angle, because such people, they want to look good. Definitely, they want to look good. They want to feel good. They want the benefits without the efforts. So you will find that they might engage, they take a bit of action. As I said, there are three things that, establish if somebody's lying: actions, patterns, and the results. And so they might, do a little bit. But in the end, you find that when you try to, you kind of look at, if you've always been saying all of this and then you try to weigh that against their results or the kind of level of action that they take, in reality, it's very minimal. So they're lying, they're exaggerating. And exaggeration, as we know, is a kind of lie. So that's the second group of people. Now let's look at the third group of people. You see, of all the three, and let's get this straight, no type of lying is in the end beneficial to anybody. However, the one that is the most destructive of the three is the third one, which I want to mention, which is somebody who never does anything, but most importantly has no intention of doing anything. They don't have any intention of doing what they say that they are doing or what they constantly always talk about, and they just talk about it. So I don't know if you've ever heard the term pathological liars. They fall under this group: manipulative liars, intentional liars, impressive liars. From the name impressive, they're obviously trying to create an impression. There's something that they're trying to, create and give off some level of, this is who I am, and that's not really who they are. And they do this because sometimes with the pathological liar, they don't have any reason. It's just a psychological issue going on there. And then with the manipulative and the intentional, that sometimes is to gain power or control. Or like I said, sometimes with impressive, they just want to feel good, sometimes gain approval of other people. But in the end, as I mentioned, there is no one type of lying that is beneficial to any of your relationships. And the reason is that lying in itself is very detrimental to the trust that is always between individuals in a relationship. And once that trust is challenged, is broken, is questioned, or when we talk about like the business space, when your credibility is questioned, it's always down to a misstatement. Maybe you've made a statement or an impression you've given or something that you've said you've not done. Where words don't align with deeds, that's what creates that, disparity. And that's when we begin to call the person a liar. You don't want to be a liar, whether you're one with good intentions or bad intentions in your personal relationships or in your business or workspace. You don't want to come across as not being somebody of their words, not being true to their words, somebody who cannot be relied on. That's what you get at the end of the day. And as you know, and as you can see, is destructive to your relationships. In the end, let me finish with this quote. And it's a quote that I, came up with myself, that the greatest misfortune about lying is that you lose trust and credibility in the eyes of the ones who hold you dear. They hold you dear whether in your personal space or in the public space. It doesn't really matter. And I think that this is one area where we probably might need to look into more often, talk about more often in our relationships, career, that's work, or, business, whatever it is that you're doing, or just in any one area of life. Because in the end, without trust, do you really have a relationship? I mean, let me leave you with this question. Do you agree that lying is detrimental to one's relationship, and that if you don't pay attention, it can be destructive to that interaction or relationship at the end of the day? Let me leave you with that question. Until next time, my friends, stay well, be well, and continue to be better. Take care, my friends. Bye.